somewhere on YouTube. And finally, there's some trash. I don't need any guidance right now. Thanks. There we go, boys and girls. It's time. My name is Tim. I am your TruthSlinger. Welcome to episode 310 of Wartime Christianity. That's right. We are coming to you live. Just another fleshing out of the TruthSlinger project, right? And so we're just continuing on interviewing extraordinary people. And this is my third interview now with a friend that I've gotten to know. He's a fellow Mana, and I'm glad to know him and call him my friend, Chuck Ellis. So welcome back to the program. Chuck, how are you today? Uh-oh. Hang on, I can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I unmuted you.
That's all right. No. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me back on. It's actually, I think, my fourth time on.
Is it? Oh, wow. Time flies when you are having fun. We always have great conversations when you are with us. You are running for, what is it, the 128th district? Is that correct?
Main House 128. And again, I like to call it Westbrook, north of the river.
Nice. And we were talking about, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, is your lovely wife. What's her name again?
Her name is Genevieve.
Yeah, Genevieve.
We call her Jean V for short because that's a lot easier for people.
Yeah, right. I imagine so. So we saw some lovely pictures of you and her, and I saw you sitting there like it was great, man. It was like you were a king right in the middle, and the whole village was around you guys. It was so sweet, really neat.
Yeah.
So and I'm sure that you want to get her here as quickly as possible, and I'm sure that this illegal immigration and stuff, people getting put ahead of that must be frustrating for you.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. Again, one of the things that tends to be leveled against the right, the conservatives, the Republicans, whatever you want to call them, is this idea that we hate immigration and immigrants. And the truth is that's not the case. What we're against is illegal immigration, partly because there's only so much space and there's only so many people that we can reasonably take into our country on an annual basis without causing the problems that you're seeing, but also because we don't know who's coming through. And there are a lot of people and drugs and other things that are coming through that are dangerous to our country. And so it's not a matter of hate or anything like that. It's just a matter of we need to have a legal process. And the other aspect of it that's incredibly frustrating to me, in some sense, I'm glad that I've gone through this because it's given me a bit deeper appreciation for what people have to go through to come to this country when they try to do so legally. Is that we need to fix the legal immigration process because I've been married for a year. And when I had met with a lawyer a year ago, I was really hoping that things would move quicker than what the lawyer was telling me. But they told me 18 to 24 months was the reasonable amount of time that I would have to wait in order to bring my wife, who I legally married, into this country. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is they make these assumptions. They're like, well, sure, but she can come visit, right? No, they will not let her come for a visit. She can't visit. I can go visit her, but she can't come visit me. And so, and we don't know how long it's going to be. Again, we're at a year at this point, and we don't really have outside of the system multiple times that tells us that it's going to be 4 more months before the USCIS makes a decision. Then it moves on to the next leg of the journey, which those 2 legs themselves could take almost a year.
Wow, that's crazy. Especially, like I said, I'm frustrated for you watching the situations where we flooded, and there's new numbers this morning. Apparently, is it 1.2 million more? 1.2 million additional illegal immigrant, and I call at this point, look, I call him illegal because just because you wave your magic wand, right, and you threw some fairy dust around, right, and said all of a sudden magically, our policies changed, and now you're just stay here in your protected status. Nothing. There, most of these people are going to get tossed out because they don't have credible asylum claims, right?
Yeah, that would be my assumption that a good portion of them will, depending on who's in who's in office and who holds control over the Senate and the House, and the presidency. I mean, the desire of the Democrats at this point is just to wave their magic wand and just naturalize all these people, regardless of how they got here and whether or not they followed the appropriate process, which I think is a miscarriage of justice. Here in the state of Maine, they what I understand, they're looking to add, they want to bring another 75,000 people to the state of Maine. And again, like one of the comments, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today about the fact that right now they say, housing experts say that we're about 50 to 80, somewhere in that range of housing units short of what we need to handle our current amount of people that are living here and or will live here over the next couple of years. And we have already taken in 75,000 illegal immigrants. They're human beings. Human beings are not illegal, but how you use the country is what makes their immigration an illegal immigration. And so, again, I'm compassionate. I'm not saying that we should mistreat these people as individuals while we're here, but I do think that we have a responsibility to protect its citizens and not do essentially what they're doing. And again, when we talk about protecting our citizens, I was very disheartened. My mom actually had listened to something that Biden had said when he was announcing his big, thing that they were going to do to curb illegal immigration. And she's like, I think Biden said you just need to get your wife over to Mexico and then she can just cross the border there. And I was like, so I went back and I listened to it, and he definitely did not say that. But what he did say was that they were going to increase the number of people working in the USCIS, which is the first stage of the immigration process, which I was like, that's great. But specifically to work with asylum cases, right? Like, what about speeding up the process for legal immigration? Like, not just me, but like my situation or family members that have a child that's, their spouse and child that they're legally trying to get here, they're legal U.S. citizens or residents or whatever, and they should get priority, and they do get priority. It's still a quicker process, but it's still, again, 18 to 24 months is an absurd amount of time for somebody to bring somebody that they're legally actually really married to, such as in my situation. And like, the reality is, it's not because they're doing an investigation. It's literally just sitting in a queue. Nobody outside of, there was an initial review, which I suspect was probably done by a bot. And then it was put into a queue, and nobody has done anything on it in a year at this point. And that's just to me, that's unacceptable. But again, part of the problem is part of the problem with Congress in general is nobody wants to pass any type of bill unless they get all of their wishes, right? So if we're going to do an immigration thing, they don't want to do anything on immigration, right? The Republicans don't want to do anything in this area of immigration unless we address this area of immigration. And so, like, even though like everybody should agree that we need to fix the legal immigration process, nobody's willing to pass anything to deal with that.
But what about that big thing that the Republicans are holding up that would have created the safest, most wonderful border ever?
That was so it's funny because people get upset about Trump for kiboshing that as though it had something to do with his election. It actually has more to do with the fact that was going to basically create a quicker path to citizenship for illegal immigrants, and it was going to still allow. So again, right now you have the Biden administration who has a mandate to stop illegal immigration. It's already their job. They have the tools that they need to be able to do it. And the Biden administration was basically saying, okay, I know we're not doing our job right now, but if you pass this bill, which will allow more people into the country illegally, we'll stop the rest. It's like, wait a second, your job is already to stop it and you're not stopping it. So basically what I see is we're just giving stuff up. It's not profiting anything. It's just giving Democrats what they want, and really no real hope. If you're not doing your job currently, if we give you more stuff, I don't think that means you're going to do your job. So that's my biggest concern with with that bill, and why I don't think that bill had any legs to actually curb illegal immigration, since again they already have the mandate. They already could have done an executive order. Why are they not doing it now?
Well, because it's a cynical ploy, and it doesn't fit with the meta narrative, but moreover, the plan of what it is that they're here for is these people are not here because anybody in this administration gives a shit about suffering black people from Haiti or anywhere else for that matter. It's horse crap. They're here to affect the election. And they're here even further cynically, I mean, if you're looking at it, is to destabilize our country. Because there is no way that you bring in that much different culture that quickly. And that's not even to say we're not vetting them even to begin with, that they're interested in our Constitution or our way of life. We don't know why they're here. We'll find out in 3 or 4 years. But in the meantime, hey, drive around without license plates. Hey, drive around, and just, and this whole thing about the animals and the ducks and all that kind of stuff. It's like, look, Springfield, Ohio is in trouble, right? They are, because you can't just, and in some places, there's a couple of places they've increased by 2,000% the population of a small town. Now, in their case, it's only like by 35% or whatever, but that's totally destabilizing. And then you got people on the news saying, oh, well, they just, I don't know why all this outside stuff is coming down on the community and this, that, and the other thing. It's not a community. There's two different groups of people, right? They're forcing them together in the school, which is a problem. You've got adult boys that are in with, 12-year-old girls. That's a problem. But they're not all meeting down at the community center. It's not one big happy family. Like you said, I don't think we're welcoming to, and open to other cultures. But it's deliberately destabilizing when you bring in that many people. And I had heard a woman complaining the other day, to bring the main focus onto it, that they're building 60 apartments in Maine for people, the migrants that are coming in. And not only that, is Joe over near Portland says that they lost their spot on a waiting list for housing because all the units were earmarked for, guess what? Asylum seekers and parolees.
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest part of the problem. To know exactly what the plan is and why they're bringing so many immigrants in, I think that there's a possibility that it has to do with trying to affect the outcome of the vote. And there is evidence to suggest that people who are coming here do believe that they will be able to vote, and they're having family members that are telling them that they can vote and they'll be able to vote for, when the article that I was reading where people were talking about this were on their way to the United States. And one of the people was saying they were going to vote for Biden. This is back when he was running. The other was saying that they were going to vote for Trump. So there are people that, like, they're not even here yet. They're not citizens, and they think they're going to be able to vote. And the reality is we don't have enough protections against people who are not citizens being able to register to vote.
Oh, but it's already illegal to vote, Chuck, in a federal election. Why do we need more laws? Yeah, because there's no enforcement mechanisms.
That's exactly. There's no enforcement, and there's no motivation in certain areas for there to be enforcement. So if that's their ploy, I don't know. It seems it's either that or something along those lines, or they're just incredibly negligent. And negligence seems seems suspect. I guess I would have a hard time believing that they're just that negligent. So that being said, when you look at the biggest problem here is that most of these people who are coming here are being funded by the government in some form or fashion. And what's happening as a result is either it's through taxation, they're taking people's money, or it's through printing of money, which is causing everybody's money and stuff to be worth less. So you're taking something away from your existing citizens to give it to people who have come here illegally, right? Again, I'm not opposed to us allowing some degree of legal asylum seekers on an annual basis. I understand that as a country, we take in 1.2 million people into our country every year in legal immigration anyway. And I wouldn't be opposed to even a potential increase in that. But the illegal immigration is the issue, and the amount of money we end up spending that we're taking away from law-abiding citizens, and we're not taking care of our own. That's the issue. It's not. I think there's this myth in America, and people believe it outside of America too, that America has unlimited resources and we can just do what we want. And the truth is that's not true. If we had money set aside, we weren't doing anything with, we had the ability to build these things and we'd already taken care of all of our existing citizens, sure, I'm okay with something along those lines. I'm okay with us using our excess. But right now we're so far in debt as a country that we're headed toward again a greater depression than the Great Depression, and like we don't have that money. We're spending on credit cards as a country, and we're so far in debt that if you sat down with a debt counselor, they would be like, "You need to file for bankruptcy." And here we are, like, "No, let's just print more money. It'll go away.
Dude,
it'll be fine."
Seriously, you're right.
True.
It's like being drunk with a whole bunch of damn credit cards, right? And you're just going ape shit, and then after a while, your accountant comes to you and says, "Listen. You ain't been acting in a while. The money's not coming in. You can't have the chauffeurs and you can't have all of this shit going on because it's eating you alive, right?" Well, yeah, I mean, that's the place we're at, where we're literally borrowing money from China to send to the Ukraine. Okay, I mean, that's insane what's going on. Yeah. But you did speak about negligence, right? And not being able to explain all this away by negligence. And I would believe that would be a good segue into talking about Donald Trump's second assassination attempt. Right? How much negligence and DEI and all of this stuff can we blame this stuff on before we start saying, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to explain, and I haven't seen an explanation as to how this guy knew Trump was going to be there, because, unless Trump's schedule is published, and it's not, and I know Trump does go golfing, but again, the fact that this guy was there and was waiting down on the next hole from where Donald Trump was going to be, and how that's something that wasn't. They didn't pick up on earlier. I mean, I would say this time at least the service did better than last time, where they engaged the individual before they had a chance to fire any shots at Trump, which is great. But the reality is how is this happening? How is it that we've already had a situation where he's been shot at, and another person sets up on the golf course to take a shot at him, with a drone camera ready to take video of it, and so again, I don't know what's happening, but there's clearly a problem, and they need to do better. Hopefully from now on they'll be more more on the spot and paying attention. But it does seem like at some level there's some negligence there, and the other aspect though is obviously either. There's kind of two options when we talk about this second assassination attempt, and I think the media is going to try to make everybody believe that this is another crazy lone gunman, but it just seems a little suspect. And if that's the case, then you have the media to blame, especially as they're now basically saying that Trump brought this on himself and he deserves to die. Essentially, I've heard some of these anchors are actually saying that. On top of that, even people in my own family who are not even necessarily Democrats, they're just so tired of Donald Trump's rhetoric that they wish that they wish that he had he had died. And it's just, again, it's a sad state of affairs. Number one, that people want him to die. It's one thing to not want him to win because you want your candidate to win. It's another thing to wish a man dead by murder. Like that's disgusting, And again, it's all fueled by the way in which the mainstream media has called Donald Trump Hitler. But it's also, what's interesting is I remember an interview. I predicted, I'm not the only one, many people did, but I predicted that they were going to try and kill Donald Trump. And there was an interview that he did with somebody. And I asked myself after I saw the interview, I was like, is this person trying to get him killed? But they asked him, are you going to declassify 9/11? Are you going to declassify JFK? Are you going to declassify the Jeffrey Epstein files? And he said yes to all three. And I was like, well, they're going to try and kill him. Right? Because nobody who's in power wants that information out there because it's obviously going to incriminate some people and they don't obviously want to have the public know what they're doing behind closed doors. And so I was not surprised with the first assassination attempt. And given the amount of time between the first one and the election, I was like, yeah, they're probably going to try again. And so like it's really no surprise, sadly, because when so whether it's organized or just individual, when you make a guy out to be Hitler, people are going to try and kill him. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think they're going to try and do it again, and this whole thing, when you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into what's going on here, the guy was a nutbag. He's donated exclusively to the Democrat Party. He was at one point in time kind of, sketchy on who he supported, but he's kind of a nutbag, but clearly he's an ideologically driven person. He owned a business, apparently, that built one shack, about 300 square feet, looks like a fishing shack. That's all, but supposedly this guy is flying around all over the world, right, recruiting for the Azov battalion. He was connected. He was in a BlackRock commercial, just as well as the other shooter was in a BlackRock commercial. And, you start putting all this stuff together going, man, this guy, and we have archived his Twitter files. The very first follow is a woman named Kim Sue, who's a former CIA intelligence official. So he's got a handler, okay? And I have absolutely, at this point, I can conclude, and what really pissed me off about the whole thing is that you get on a 15-minute press conference, and for the first 5 minutes, they got their noses up each other's buttholes so far that they're all brown, right? Because, oh, what a great job we did. Yeah, patting each other on the back going, oh, yeah, we got a tip by a guy with a phone that just happened to get the guy's license plate, and you're patting yourselves on the back as you caught him? And so I'm like, this was an abject failure, okay? Total failure. They came within 400 to 500 yards within range, and I don't care how many bushes were in between in line of sight. I don't care, okay? There should have been a perimeter. This is the second perimeter failure. And not even a drone, man, but a casual walk with a canine division the night before would have caught this guy, right? And so then there's the whole question of how did he know? Well, he did golf there often, but let's just say for a minute that it still doesn't make sense. Sean Hannity, I don't know if you've heard this, but Sean Hannity was in the know that he was going golfing with his buddy. I can't remember the guy's name, but a real estate developer was invited and then sheepishly declined because he's not really a good enough player to play with Donald Trump. And I'm like, listen, man, if Donald Trump asks you to play golf, you go play golf. You just say, look, all right, well, fine, I'm shitty at it, but, let's go. Why would you do that? So that, and maybe, okay, well, fine, he's got a big ego, he doesn't want to dent it, but it sure smells wrong. So, at this point, I think that he needs to start looking into some sort of private security because after round number 2, I'm just not feeling real confident that, the stupid sheriff grandpa gets up there who's running the damn thing. They run these press conferences just like KJP does, like everybody's in kindergarten. And we're going to have this many questions, and don't act up, don't get out of line, okay? And so, he gets up there and he says, well, he wasn't the president of the United States, so he didn't have that full presidential detail, blah, 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 so on and so forth. He goes, they didn't have an adequate perimeter, but I imagine next time we will. And I'm like going, What do you mean? Is this the second time we've had a failure to imagine that people might want to hurt the president of the United States after he's had his ear pierced? What the hell is the matter with you? You don't need to imagine it. It already happened less than 8 weeks ago, right?
Yep.
So, I'm just not buying this crap, okay? They had enough resources. And this idea that the Secret Service is just so damn strapped. It's like, do you know how many billions of dollars they get? And you telling me that they can't get a few more agents to watch over him properly or be able to deputize the damn local police and say, this is the way you will do it because, God damn it, this is a dynamic threat environment. It's ridiculous. I don't buy any of it, man. I think it's an inside job, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's easy to feel that way. I mean, I think it's much harder to believe that these are just a couple of crazy wingnuts. Although, again, it is still, because of the way in which the media has inflamed people, it is possible to believe that some people with this kind of training may be motivated in this way. That being said, I don't think it's random. Again, when somebody's telling you that they're going to go in and they're going to take out and expose the deep state, and then that person there are 2 attempts on his life. It's really hard to believe that it's just random people that are angry about, this guy's angry about Ukraine, the other guy's angry about something else, especially when this guy has now aligned himself. He hadn't before the first one, but we also have another person that's in this presidential race conversation who his dad and his uncle were both killed, and they were both running on that same. So, I mean, JFK ran on and intended to expose the deep state, and then he was shot and killed. Surprise, surprise. And then his brother, RFK Jr.'s dad, did the same thing and died before he had a chance to actually become president or be voted. And so is it really surprising that a person that says he's going to expose the deep state and seems like he's on a mission? I mean, Trump this year, especially post the assassination attempt, but even if you go back, I would say by around the time that Vivek Ramaswamy dropped out and endorsed Trump, I feel like there was a shift. I can't give Vivek all the credit, though I do love Vivek, but there was a shift in Trump, and I think a lot of his rhetoric, and I see a much more, a less gregarious and much more serious man who is headed for his destiny as he sees it, and he's a man on a mission. And yeah, if you're in the deep state, you don't want that guy to be there. And so it seems a lot more likely to me that this is something that they're orchestrating. It's hard to believe otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple of the things that we didn't mention was the pharmaceutical industry. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which potentially
the military-industrial complex.
The military-industrial complex, right? The media industrial complex, right, which is going on, and Big Ag, okay? I'm telling you, man, the Kellogg's executives and Post executives, the people that have been teaching us to eat like shit for years and going, oh, we need all these extra chemicals in here that they don't need over in Europe and don't want over in Europe. It's like, what's all that about, right? There are a million motivations. Plus, he's anti-globalist. Right? He's a nationalist. He is the biggest threat on the planet to the new world order. Surprise, they want to kill him. So, the question becomes, do you think that Donald Trump has got the message? And do you think, we are in extraordinary times, right? And
yes,
we are now when we passed the first assassination attempt, we were past normal. Now we're past normal squared, okay? So the question is are we going to start to see abnormal things starting to happen in response to some of this abnormal stuff? Because I know hold is really the best position for all of us, and I know it kills all of us, the ones that are really active, but it's this hold, don't do anything stupid, because they're just itching. They've already blamed his own assassination attempt on the fact that he's hacking on the Haitians in Ohio. Okay, and he's guilty of this. And they literally said on MSNBC minutes after this, they said Do you think he's going to get the message and tone down the rhetoric in his campaign? Do you think he's finally going to get it now? I'm like going, holy shit. You know,
Yeah.
you're saying if you
Yeah.
don't behave, you're going to get it. And it's like,
Well, yeah. The other thing is, I mean, they're clearly trying to redirect why he's trying to be killed. They're trying to say that it's his rhetoric, right? It's the way in which he talks, where he sounds very boastful and he sounds like a jerk, and he says things that people intentionally interpret as being racist, even though they're not meant to be said in a way that intends racism. Like, this is where people get on Trump all the time, where, you know, again, if you end up studying logic and do critical thinking, your job is to try to interpret people along the lines of what they're trying to say, not trying to misinterpret people intentionally. And the reality is, both the right and the left does this. So we need to be consistent in the way in which we criticize this. But Trump is not racist. He doesn't care about the fact he's commenting on the fact that they're Haitian because they're Haitian, not because he has a problem with Haitian people in general, right? And so, but people are all upset about his rhetoric. And again, like, why in the world we're in a place where our world is falling apart, our economy is crumbling, cost of everything is going up, global crises are abounding, and the big concern for the majority of people is the fact that Donald Trump says mean things. We're still here. We're still upset about the fact that he says mean things, even if they're true. And that's the thing. And then we blame him for other things. So, like, for instance, now there are cases where people are mistreating Haitians in other parts of the country as a result of what Donald Trump said. Like, okay, Donald Trump, there's no way that you can misunderstand what he said to suggest that he's telling anybody to be rude to anybody. Saying that illegal immigrants, for instance, are illegal and they shouldn't be here because they came here illegally does not say, just in case you think this is what anybody is saying, does not say that we should mistreat those people, right? I'm somebody who believes that we need to crack down on illegal immigration, and yet I sit on the board for a nonprofit that serves immigrants. The majority of those immigrants are asylum seekers in some form or fashion, right? I believe that that's the appropriate thing for me to do. Is these people are here. It's not their fault that they're here. It's the government's fault for letting them be here. But at the same time, these people need food. If they're going to be here, they need to learn to speak the language, and they need to understand how things work here. And so to have an organization that serves this population, I'm very happy to sit on that board, while at the same time recognizing that we should governmentally be saying that this should be not be happening, right? So again, kind of what I'm trying to point out here is the difference between judging and criticizing and being racist toward people versus saying the truth that these people should not be here illegally and they're causing problems. They're two different things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, what we got going on here is the Juicy Smollett effect, okay? Because I don't know if you've heard, but Governor DeWine came out and said they're all hoaxes, or hoax, if that's the plural. I'm not quite sure what the plural of it is. 33 of them. And so they keep running out of the damn school buildings and all the police buildings and shit because somebody keeps calling in bomb threat. And it's just like, it's some guy... Hello, is your refrigerator running? It probably has a bomb in it. Okay, and I mean, they run out and then they blame it, and then the media runs with it and says, "Oh, it's all Trumpies, it's all MAGA people, like that we're all calling and we're all that pissed off because we've been inflamed by Trump's rhetoric." It's all bullshit. It's all a bunch of crap. And the only
and if Trump's rhetoric inflames, it's because of how it's used by the media primarily.
Right.
If you just listen to him, you don't come to those conclusions. But then the media repeats and repeats and repeats only a segment of it and tries to make it look like he's saying something that he's not saying, and then blames him for the fact that what they did causes problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? The FBI has put up a big billboard in Springfield, Ohio, and it's written half in Creole that says, "Feeling kind of harassed today? Give us a call. Let us know." Okay? And so now you got Uber drivers with a guy in the back with a camera, and the Uber driver's complaining about the surrounding of his vehicle by a bunch of crazy white people, and there's nobody outside. But yet he's calling it in because he's pissed off and he knows the power that he wields. They understand they're a protected class and a protected status. None of this can lead to anything but bad stuff. And they're further along the line with us in the UK over there, and you can talk about gun control and all this crap you want because they're trying to blame this whole assassination attempt on gun control again. Like, they're having machete fights in the UK, in the South End, in London, okay? They're just chopping each other to pieces.
Well, on the same day that I think Sandy Hook happened years ago, right? In the same day or maybe not the same day, but I think in the same week or at least in the same month for sure. There was a guy in China who killed 20 kids in a school with a knife, right? Okay, so like, the weapon is not the problem. Like, what we should be talking about, and this kind of gets at like something that I wrote recently regarding homelessness, addiction, mental health. But really, the problem here is actually mental health, and we as a society we're not addressing the issue of mental health. The shooter here in Maine, for instance, right? There were so many indications that this guy should have been forcibly in a mental facility, not optional. You are hearing voices; those voices are telling you to shoot stuff. You should have been apprehended, right? Like, I'm sorry, but that's the bottom line. Somebody in that situation is clearly in a bad state of mind and should not be out there in the public. We're not addressing that.
But here's the cynical thing. You could say we're just calloused as a country. You could say, wow, we're so caught up in our own cell phones and our mocha loca lattes and shit and grandes or whatever the hell we're drinking at the moment that we're just don't see, right? We just pass over the people that need help and all this kind of stuff. But, okay, I have seen technology, and it's the same stuff that possibly Kamala wore, which is beaming technology, where you have intersecting sound waves. You can't hear them until if they're directed, until they're aimed at your head, and you hear them in your ear, and nobody else around you hears shit, okay? And with what we know about MK Ultra, this, that, and the other thing, I have a more cynical approach. Why don't we deal with mental health on a large-scale basis? I don't know. Why don't we deal with homelessness and needles and rats and bubonic plague, right? It just seems to me that all of this decay is it's not accidental. That's like I said, that's my cynical approach on it, is I believe that these three-letter agencies, right, and that's why they're trying to kill him, like you said, okay, if the stuff comes out or, and they lose power, oh my God, they can't let him become president.
Yeah. It's a power game. It's like we created democracy. The people rose up against the bureaucrats, against the kings and the nobles and all this stuff because we didn't like being treated poorly, right? We didn't want to be in a situation where we were under the power and control of people, and that's essentially why we created democracy, right? Now, these crafty and creative people that now have technology and have infiltrated every level, all of our infrastructure, every one of our my brain's not working, institutions, all of our institutions, right? And now they have this technology to be able to coordinate it, right? They can make sure that if you search the internet, you see what they want you to see. They can make sure that you can't find what you're looking for. They're controlling the flow of information, and through stepping up other things. And so this is what it's about, though. It's about control. It's about them essentially becoming the new nobles, the new people who are in power over others. It's all about power and control, unfortunately, and they're doing it all in the under the guise of the people. I just remember that if you haven't watched V for Vendetta, by the way, it's one of my favorite movies. And just for fun, this year's election is on November 5th. So I think it's a very interesting movie this year. But in V for Vendetta, like as they're, I remember the movie starts out and it's curfew, and it's like, this is a yellow coded curfew is now in effect. Please return to your homes. This is for your protection. And it's always about this. We're doing this. Oh, no, we're not seizing power. We're trying to protect the people. And it's like, no, it's about you having power and control, and you're using crisis as an excuse to be like, oh, well, we can't let people do that anymore because they'll make the wrong decision. And and it's positioned as though they're caring, but in reality, it's just about them being able to seize more power and control for themselves.
So I have a question for you. On a daily basis, when you wake up in the morning, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level of the dystopianism that we are experiencing? Like literally, that we are living in a movie script, like 1984.
On the scale of 1 to 10, you said?
Yeah.
14, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, which dystopian movie are we living in? I mean, we're kind of living in the Hunger Games, but America essentially is the capital, right? We're living in 1984. We're living in Brave New World, you know, and the list goes on. You know, there's so many of these. You know, V for Vendetta again is another one that's like really interesting thing to look at, especially in light of the 2020 pandemic and what happened there. You know, and so like there's just a lot of crazy things that are happening in our society that make it feel like we're living in a dystopian world for sure. Like again. You know, I like to talk about economics because I was a banker for 15 years, and I actually started at the University of Maine at Farmington as a business economics major before switching to a straight mathematics degree.
You got a degree in math?
What?
You got a degree in math?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I minored in math, man.
Yeah. So I got. It's funny. It's a Bachelor of Arts, which is interesting, rather than a Bachelor of Science in math. So I don't think of math as being an art, but that's fine. I don't really know how that works exactly, but anyway, being like the economics, I think, you know, when we talk about the national debt and stuff like this, one of the biggest problems that we have as a society is that people struggle with mathematics in the first place. They don't understand mathematics. They don't understand how our system works, just like they don't understand how our government works. Like, how can we help people make the right decisions by giving them the right information when they don't have even a foundation to be able to understand what's going on? Again, you know, I went door to door and I was talking to somebody, and I may have mentioned this last time I was on, but they didn't know that our state government was essentially a mirror of the federal government. If you don't know that, you're probably not paying attention to what your state government is doing, and therefore you're not going to stop the bad things from happening. You're just focused on what they want you to be focused on, which is the national. You know, and when we get into economics, if you don't understand math, it's hard to understand like the big picture of how the economic environment works, especially when, you know, they've seized control of the institutions, and they're like, well, we have economists that have proved that this strategy will work and Trump's will not. And it's like, well, we have reality that's shown us that Trump's did work, and these same people that are approving yours are saying, you know, approved of Biden's, which isn't working. But again, without being able to understand mathematics and basically the economics is a combination of mathematics, sociology, psychology, right? A combination of these three fields, it's hard for people to understand why there's so much concern with the things that people are doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of went on a tangent there, but
well, no, I guess, you know, the other night we were talking on Spaces, and I forgot today. I really want to start simulcasting this kind of conversation on Spaces just so people can listen to it and get more people exposed to it. But you know, I'm not an economist, okay? Like I said, physicist, mathematician by training, engineer. And I like to burn things. But yeah, I smell smoke, okay? And, you know, you just can't, like you said, I mean, I've said this for years. You don't need to be an economist to understand that if you continue to increase your debt limit, at which servicing the debt now becomes all-encompassing of your actual income, I mean, you reach a point of no return. That's where people declare bankruptcy. And it's like, well, why do you think, and what do you think happens when a country goes bankrupt? You can't just keep either creating money, printing it, you know, out of thin air, or borrowing it constantly in order to keep funding all of these things that any normal household would say, we have to cut our discretionary spending, right? Isn't that what we say? You know, gee, maybe we can't afford that pool this year, or maybe we can't afford to send Bob on that mission trip, who we don't even know Bob, okay? But we want to be nice to Bob, and we want to be nice to Jesus and all that. It's like, yeah, well, maybe I can't afford that kind of stuff. But yet we just continue to burn it at both ends. And, in the spaces the other night, we talked about, oh, you guys are just a bunch of fear mongers, this, that, and the other thing. It's always going to continue to just go on the way it's always gone on, no matter who gets elected, no matter this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, either you're a paid operative or you're an idiot, because we've already had 2 assassination attempts, right? We're way past normal again. This is not a country that's civilized anymore. You don't go executing people you don't like. We're supposed to vote on this stuff, right? So we're way off the rails. And, the idea that, well, if we really believe that possibly there are enemies in the world that would want to take advantage of us and evil people, and I think there are, when would you do that? Well, you would do that at the weakest possible moment, which makes the next 80 days or 50 days terrifying. Okay. And so, yeah, man, and so I think that people would be best to understand that, your bank card may not work tomorrow morning, or every day like you expect it to. That Dunkin' Donuts might not be open, at some point in time in the future. And I've been trying to, for the last 300 episodes, get people to just entertain that possibility in their head that their normalcy bias is going to get them killed and get our nation burned down, because everybody's going, oh, it's fine, or I still can't believe the people that are like, oh, I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me, man. And that's scary. It's really scary. Uninformed voters.
Well, it is, but it's also, you have to admit, it's not easy to be informed. It's very easy to be misinformed, but if you want to be informed, you have to seek it out. Again, all of the systems are trying to point people away from any truth that's being presented. Am I making excuses and saying that people shouldn't do their due diligence and try to figure out what's going on? No, they absolutely should. They are responsible for, if they're going to vote, they're going to be part of this country, which they should. They are going to, they're responsible to understand and make sure that what they believe is happening is what's actually really happening. But at the same time, it's not easy. And again, they do it. The other side does a really good job with the social pressures, especially with the term conspiracy theorist, right? Which really this is the social conditioning from Brave New World, right? They're trying to push people away. They socially condition with making people dislike when Donald Trump comes up, because anytime Donald Trump comes up, everybody cringes, right? And so that's socially conditioning people to dislike Donald Trump. It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's the tension that happens when his name comes up that they've created. But anyway, the social conditioning to I lost my train of thought there. What was I saying?
Well, we were just talking about the social conditioning that's going on in all of us from the programming that's been going on that causes us to want to.
Yeah, it was around people and them not being informed. So we socially condition people, and we make it difficult for them to find truth. We socially condition them by anybody who's trying to speak truth and just question things. We call conspiracy theorists. You think of Robert Malone, when he started questioning, after getting double vaxxed, he started questioning the vaccine and whether or not it was wise. And all of a sudden now he's getting canceled. He's getting called a conspiracy theorist. When we do this, we make it, we again, there's some social conditioning. And then if you're just looking in the normal places where Americans for 100 years or 50 years or whatever it is have been able to go and get the news, you can't trust it there anymore. And I think it's just, we have to admit that it's difficult for people. Again, they still have a responsibility. They still should pay attention and be like, okay, something isn't adding up here, right? And they should do some more work. But again, our society, because we're increasingly polarized, we both the right and the left are pushing people away from wanting to be more involved, because getting involved means they have to fight with people, because that's what it looks like in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get more involved and you learn more, you're going to have to pick a side, and then your friends over here aren't going to like you, and your friends over here aren't going to like you, or vice versa. And I think a lot of people, again, that's more of their social conditioning. That's a big part of the reason people don't get educated. But then this is the best part. those are the people that determine the outcome of elections, right?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that are in the middle.
Right. And what's really interesting is somebody said something earlier in the chat that we've gone from a high trust society to a low trust society. And I think that was really important, is that they've sowed these seeds of division and mistrust, right? And then what you do is you keep people ignorant, then you feed them and tell them lies. And I mean, oh my God, there's still... And what's disgusting is it's come from the very top down, that our supposed powers of example in the administration still are telling the lie that Donald Trump said there were fine people on both sides, calling white supremacists and Nazis with bulging veins coming out of the field with torches, right? And and then people that are just, low information. And to a certain degree, I do feel like they're victims, because they are, the press has completely abdicated their responsibility and become a wholly owned subsidiary of the uniparty state, right? The government apparatus. We've gone full-blown Pravda, dude. And so, so then the question becomes, right, and we can start to bring this around and bring it in for a landing maybe, is what the hell do we do about that? Because what comes to mind is, well, re-education camp. Well, insane asylum. We say those things, but you know what? Insane asylums can hold people like us, and they can hold people like the other side. It just depends on who's got the keys. Do you understand? Re-education is important. It's just really important who's the one doing the re-education, whether they're re-educating Jordan Peterson or Jordan Peterson is re-educating them, you see? So how do we bridge that? Because, I mean, clearly we've got lost generations, at least one or two, that are completely just batshit, like checked out, NPC, or believing the wrong stuff, all the wrong stuff.
Yeah, I would say one generation, mostly millennials. I think Gen Z, and there are some millennials that are waking up millennial, but there are many of them that are not. But I think Gen Z, there's a lot more hope, especially with Gen Z men. They're very much rejecting. Well, I mean, most of the leftist society hates men, so why would they agree? Why would they buy into that ideology? But yeah, so like, how do we, what can we do? How do we fix the problem? I mean, again, like, it's something that I think a lot of times we as conservatives or Republicans or libertarians is we just kind of want to be left alone. But we can't, we have to be involved. That's really the answer. The answer is civic action, is get involved at a local level and have civil discourse. Again, like, I've got a number of people, not a lot, it's tough in this world, but I've got a number of people that are very politically motivated and pay a lot of attention to politics and disagree with me on a lot of things. And I maintain those friendships. Some of those people, we don't talk politics, but or not that much. But there's a recognition of the fact that though we disagree, right, we believe that the other person wants good for the world. We just disagree on how to get it, right? And I think building relationships with people, having civil discourse, and presenting our opinion as much as we're able to in a way that is, not rude, right? That's not really helpful most of the time. Sometimes it's necessary, actually. Sometimes strong reactions are actually helpful. But if all we ever do is like talk down to people and treat them like crap, well, they're not going to be our friends. We're not going to be able to influence them. But over time, building relationships with people and being able to influence them through those relationships and through the reputation that we have is our hope, right? We can get involved. We can help get conservatives elected right now, right? That's the side that is the side of truth at the moment. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be the way, but right now, we can help conservatives get elected by helping drive people around to doors, do lit drops, giving money on a local level, not just giving money to the national parties and stuff like that. Those are the types of things that we can do, and they make a huge difference. As somebody who ran for office 2 years ago, and I was part of a town where we didn't have any active maybe Republican city committee, I basically had to do everything from scratch, and I worked really hard, and I did all that just to lose by like 30% because I'm in a heavy liberal district. A normal person would probably quit at this point and move on, but I feel like I have a calling from God to be involved in politics, and so I'm not going anywhere. But like, it's really difficult, and having somebody just to drive me around, or just to be like, oh, I know so and so over here, you should go talk to them. Like, you don't understand, if you've not run for office, how significant of an impact that is. But it's huge. From me to you, that's huge. Just the little things that we can do to support and help people who are running for office, and because it's a tough task. But we need school board members, we need city council, we need people to just support those people, even just by saying that they support them, but giving money, giving time. Anyway, I think that's how we fix our country.
Yeah, and not only that, even if you don't have kids, if your kids are grown up, right, and left, right,
Yep.
why can't you take your grandpa ass right down and run the school board, right? You've raised some damn kids.
Are so busy, so they need, like, you can represent them. You don't have to have kids in order to be on the school board to be able to represent them.
That's
because parents
saying.
are so busy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, if you are a retired person, okay, and especially these are the kind of people that we're talking about that are looking for things to do. The ones that are like, well, how do I help? Right? I got time on my hands. I even got a little bit of money. Right. And this is, I mean, statistically, you understand that the age at which people start volunteering typically is usually about, 50 to 60 years old. They start to look around and go, man, I want to try and give back to the world a little bit. Right. At least most decent people. And so, those people need to be, engaged. And something that you mentioned earlier, I've been trying to figure out how to navigate this and have some sort of idea of a blueprint in my mind. And so I'm, heavily biblical. I consider that, what did Jesus do and all that kind of stuff. Not in a cynical way, but, really like how do we handle this situation? And I keep coming to the conclusion further and further that and it's a hope. It's a deep hope that I have that at some point we're going to get a percentage of people in this country that are going to start seeing, and the cognitive dissonance is going to get so great in them that they're presented with what they see at the grocery store and the prices, and they hear, for example, things are better. We've brought down the cost. Your life is better, right? Constantly, that sooner or later, more and more people are going to start to crack, right? And there's going to be those certain group of people that it's just, I don't know, man. They eat too many of the corn pops when they were growing up and drank too much of the Kool-Aid, and they're just gone, right? They're not going to, but there's this other group that is going to systematically begin waking up. Unfortunately, the more difficult it gets, the harder it gets, that it's going to crack on its own, and it's really hard to watch and say, just hold, let them fall on their sword, right? And you continue to let your light shine. That's what the verse that came to mind, right? Let your light shine so that others see your good works. And sooner or later, at some point, they're going to say to you, what is it about you, right? And so I think that corporately speaking, when we all do that as Christians and all as conservatives that use these same ethical ideals, that we need to never play into the hands of the other side. It's so tempting to become violent, to become angry, to go with it. We've been, had our faces pissed on and told it's raining for so long. It's very frustrating. But I think that the best thing to do is just steady as she goes and let God do his thing and work in men's hearts, because barring some work in men's hearts, all is lost anyway. I mean, amen?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, I wouldn't be able to keep going if I didn't realize that this is a spiritual battle, because people buying into some of the things that they're buying into could not happen unless there was something else, because logic and reason says that was impossible. But yeah, this is a spiritual battle, and unless God does something, I don't see it going anywhere positive. But I do see him doing something. So
yeah, well, I think that now would be a good time to heed the words. Do not be ashamed. I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation, right, to those who are being saved, right. But to those that are perishing, it's foolishness. They don't understand it. They don't get it. And the deal is and I learned this early on, as I put two and two together. I said, people don't want to look like fools. And that's why they don't share the gospel, because people will consider them fools and they don't want to be called fools, right?
Yeah.
But at this time and this place, in this day and age, I'm going to be called a fool for Christ. I don't care, because your way isn't working. Your way is falling apart. Everything is going to hell in a handbasket. And this is the way it was done for thousands of years, and it worked. And so y'all better get on the on the bandwagon. And we need to do that as lovingly as possible, right? Which is why, and I think just the last thing is touching on the homeless situation. Now, okay, is an opportunity, because more homeless are being generated because of this influx of migration, illegal migration, right? Or protected class of migration. And, so I think, getting directly involved in that kind of stuff and seeing how we can and lift the church back up. And you know what? Maybe it's time to go back to the damn buildings and start to get on fire, right? And start to get up and do works for God and works for Christ, rather than just going someplace in a club on a Sunday, singing a couple songs, making your conscience feel better, attending a little Bible study on how to be a better partner in your marriage and going home, No, engage, right? We need people to be engaging and going and like literally helping homeless people and spreading the love of Christ that way, because that is the way it happens, and that's the way it works. And I think that we should never grow weary, as the Bible says, of doing these good works. And I think that we're in danger of doing that, right? And I mean, it's real. I know that at some point God says it's permissible to pick up a sword. I just want to avoid that as long as possible, right? Absolutely. Yeah. It also, it says, so much as it depends on you, be at peace with all people. That's another one. So so much as it depends on you. Yeah. And I've been, like I said, I've been talking to people, and I've forged some relationships recently, and I'm continuing to try and, in my way, reach across the aisle with a guy that I don't understand very well. And he's a black guy, and he did the BLM thing, and I made some prejudgments, and I had somebody whispering in my ear, of course, telling me some things about him, and so I got to rely on some things, and at least to some extent. But I ran with it, and I misjudged, them. And I've had a big thing about labels, man. Labels. I think they're getting to a point where I'm getting real tired of them, because they're not solving anything. They're just our attempts to classify people together, and like black people. What the hell does black people mean? People that all share the same color skin? Oh, well, great. Why does that exactly cause you to be a community? It doesn't. Okay, it doesn't. Communities are formed through ideologies and cultures and all sorts of things, and that's why we got this mess on our hands, because you can't have competing cultures in the same damn country. So in the end, I hope, the Christian voice wins out. I hope that, freedom rings out. I hope the Constitution continues to be durable. I think we're probably in the most difficult, trying time. I remember I used to hear them say, constitutional, we're going to have a real constitutional crisis. Holy crap, how many have we had already? Right? We are way in a serious constitutional crisis. And I mean, we're going to find out, just exactly how tough the fibers are in this particular piece of cloth, because it's getting kind of frayed, man. The flag is looking rough right about now.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're going to call it closed. We had a good viewership today, man. I think next time I want to put it on Spaces. We had over 500 people, 500 views today on the video, which is awesome.
Not bad.
Even more impressions. So and that's live. And so in the middle of the day when people could be watching soap operas. So I mean, seriously, we are in a fight for eyeballs and attention. And hopefully you heard something here that spurred you. And again, give us your contact information or how they can reach you if they want somebody help you out, Chuck.
Yeah, you can go to my website, ellisformaine.com. It's for FOR, not the number. So ellisformaine.com is my website. You can also find me on Twitter at Chuck Ellis 1983. Those are the best ways to get in touch. Or again, you can email me at charles@ellisformaine.com.
Yep, very cool. And we're going to be starting a podcast with you, right? Mm-hmm.
Yep,
soon.
Absolutely.
So what are you going to be focusing on during that show?
It's a great question. Still working out the details, but I think a lot of it. One of the things that I want to, an element of it is just like keeping people in Maine educated on like what's going on in Maine. Trying to do some local stuff. Obviously, we're probably going to touch on some stuff on a national level, but I think there's one of the biggest problems in being educated on what's going on in Maine is that there's very little information, and there's very little easily accessible information. And so part of the goal is to be discussing what's actually going on here in the state of Maine from a political standpoint, so people can be aware, educated, and know what to do.
Well, good. Good deal. Well, Rob is furiously looking around for some alternative software so I can run the studio in a little bit better way. And so I'm excited about setting that up and doing that. You're a very bright voice, I think. And so we're really privileged to have you here broadcasting. We got your link up there. Rob's been good enough to put that up there for us. And so,
thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. And I think that, this work is going to go on after the election. And I think this group of people is getting put together for a reason. And, I don't know, man, we just keep getting up every day and fighting the good fight, because I think that's just what, like, you felt called by God to do that. I feel called by God to do this, right? And I think that the whole educational standpoint is very important because, like, for example, we talked earlier, most people don't know about the Cloward and Piven strategy, and you might want to look that up sometime. Cloward and Piven. It's all was back in the '60s, and it was during the time that Saul Alinsky was kind of getting big in all this, and the Weather Underground. And the whole idea there was you can take down an entire society without firing a shot. All you have to do is overwhelm their social welfare systems, right? Until basically they just can't write the checks anymore, and the thing goes bankrupt, which is exactly how the Soviet Union fell. And so that's an interesting strategy. Yeah, that strategy's been around for a while, and it sure seems like it's been incorporated into what's going on on a daily basis here. So I think that educational thing is good. And don't forget, if you want to have guests, we can make that happen too. So if you want to interview other people, and I will just drop right into the background there, and you guys can chat, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that is one thing that I would like to do. Like, there are definitely there are things where I feel like I'm an expert. When it comes to like practical reality of economics, but there are other aspects of Maine law and things like that where I'm not necessarily the expert. But so I'd love to bring in some of those people who are in the Republican Party, some people in office, some people not, to let them kind of lead the conversation. Like if I could be so blessed to have Reagan Paul, seems like she's leading the charge in talking about not electric vehicles, but the energy, the issues that are coming up in energy. So, like, if we were to talk about energy and quote unquote clean energy, that would be somebody who I would try to bring on to kind of lead that conversation, and I'd want to ask more questions. But yeah, so that's kind of some of the things that I would want to do. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And if anybody knows people out there that are interesting to be interviewed, you want to make sure you get them here to us at the TruthSlinger Project, and we can make that happen. We can either have me interview them or Chuck on his show, or, if you got any ideas to improve the network, definitely let us know. And if you know anybody else wants to be doing a podcast and getting their voice out there, because I think that it's really important. And we had the Spaces on the other night, and I think you should consider coming on with Spaces with us. But we had some voices in there that were very intelligent. Waz is a fantastic historian. If you've never spent any time listening to Waz, he brings a lot to the project. And we had a gentleman there from Maine politics who he'd been, I think, about a dozen years in Michigan politics. And so, gave us a lot of insight into what goes on inside of state houses and things like that. And so it's really great. And I really walked away from that one feeling like I learned a lot. Like I've gone into a lot of discussions and I feel like, pretty much I walk out of there, I have an interview. I didn't know a lot more than I knew before, but man, I walked away with a head full of information, and things to consider. And so, yeah, I definitely, and I think that talking is it, man. And I hate it when people come in here and they come into a room, like they came into the Spaces, and they go, oh, poo-poo caca, all you guys do is sit around and talk. It's like, well, who are you? Who are you, an FBI guy? What, are you trying to get me to go, we should go storm the castle again, you dumb shit, get out of here. We're here to talk about this stuff so we can come up. This is only hope. So don't discourage us. Anybody tries to discourage you from talking, not good. Bad stuff, right? So, all right, man. I think we've wrapped it up for the day. Stay here. We got some stuff to talk about. Let me wrap this up and say goodbye to everybody. I'll be back in a minute, Chuck. Thank you very much for being here. We enjoyed you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. That was great, man. I'm gonna end the live stream now because we have private things to talk about. We're gonna set up and talk about his show and what his set's gonna look like and all that kind of boring stuff that you probably aren't interested in. I may leave the record button on because we always get gems and jewels go on in the after hours type stuff. And someday I'm actually going to have an actual paywall and people will be interested in seeing our outtakes and behind the scenes type stuff. So kind of practicing on doing that, man. It was a great show. Thanks, Rob, for being so great as moderator. You always are. And thanks for posting those links. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, especially in the middle of the day, to talk about politics in general on a national level and Maine politics. And I might remind you, don't forget to pray for our president and our country, right? Even if you don't think it works, do it anyway, because we can use them all, man. Fake your way into it, right? What do they say? Act your way into good thinking, right? Just do the right things, boys and girls, and be good. And I hope to see you again. And if anything else goes on, and 1,200 Hezbollah.
2,800.
28.
3,000. It's up to 3,000.
Holy crap. I don't know if you guys heard, but 3,000 Hezbollahs blew up.
Injured or dead.
Injured or dead. Yee. There's going to be some retribution going on there. So if all of a sudden a bunch of missiles launch on Israel and we go into World War III, we'll be back, right? Yeah, fake it till you make it, Rob. You got that right. All right, buddy. We'll see you later. And everybody else, thank you so much for being here. Have a nice day. My name's TruthSlinger. I'm out here. Bye-bye. Moo.